How's it going there, guys? Detonator here, and finally I have a movie review for Interviral's found footage horror film, Slenderman. Now, this is the longest film that Interviral has ever uploaded to their channel. As I recall, it's 73 minutes long, and so it's actually a feature-length movie, and I was pretty interested to see what they would do with creepypasta of Slenderman. You've probably heard of Slenderman, probably the most popular creepypasta on the internet. And pretty creepy. Of course, there's the Marble Hornets web series, which is just very scary, at least to me and a lot of people. And so I wanted to see what Interviral would do with it. And just the fact that it's their longest movie ever, it's actually feature length. I was just intrigued. So finally got around to watching it. And the plot is, as you can kind of expect with most found footage horror films, pretty simple. It's about this guy who buys a new $800 camera and he goes to his old hometown to film some footage of this guy's wedding. And while he's there, he ends up seeing a weird-looking tall guy in a suit, and he doesn't have eyes or a mouth. He has no face. And, spoiler alert, it's the Slenderman. Big surprise, Slenderman is in a movie called Slenderman. And he's just trying to figure out what's going on with that and how it may or may not connect to his past. And he ends up encountering another person who's going through a very eerily similar situation to what he's going through. And you just see what's going on in these few days of his life that are chronicled as he's recording. And yeah, it's probably, if not my favorite, like one of my top two favorite Interviral films that I've watched so far. This is a pretty creepy movie. Like, I'll even just go as far as to say it's scary. It's straight up, it scared me. Multiple times in the movie, I was very on edge throughout. The Slenderman, I'll get into him more later. Like, let's talk about the character in the story here. So, for the first 10 minutes or so, I was kind of thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to suck? Because the main guy, he's kind of talking to his girlfriend, and she was not very good at acting. Yeah, it's a no-budget horror film, of course, I know. You gotta cut them some slack and give them credit where credit's due, because the fact that they can even do this off of literally no budget is fairly impressive, but still, even for YouTube standards, this chick's acting, no, wasn't very good. The main guy was better, however, he just came off as kind of a douchebag, at least to me, in the beginning portions, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work for me. I'm not sure if I'm going to have any characters that I can latch on to. But thankfully, after the first 10 minutes or so, you get to learn more about this guy's past, and he does become more relatable and more likable, and just what he's going through. It's very interesting, because the story, that's something you really have to nail to make a Slenderman story work. Just have, really have an interesting lore behind the movie, because what makes Slenderman creepy and so popular isn't just because, like, oh my gosh, it's a tall guy who doesn't have a face and he has tentacles out of his back. No, it's just the entire lore behind it. You can find these these real accounts of like how people have been researching the Slenderman and trying to find out more, and they've been contacting other people and trying to find out what Slenderman is and what Slenderman does to children, and just overall the lore, and especially, great examples in the web series Marble Hornets. Does a great job setting up the lore there. Like, that's the prime example. So you gotta have just an interesting, intriguing story. And this movie did that pretty well. So yeah, you can't just have Slenderman popping up here and there and it's like, oh, it's scary. No, because it's not really going to be that scary or interesting. You gotta have a good story. This movie pretty much nails that as well as it could have done for, what they were trying to do. And again, the main guy, he does become more relatable and more likable, and I liked him more as the movie went along. And just the acting, as the movie goes along, just gradually, it seemed as if the acting just kept on getting better and better. So that was good. The dialogue is decent. It's probably mostly improvised, or at least partially, because that's how it is in found footage films. But nonetheless, it's relatable dialogue. There's some kind of funny lines here and there. And you really do, especially for the main character, you feel like the desperation in his voice when he's trying to figure out what's going on, and it was convincing. I thought it was pretty decently performed, especially for YouTube standards. And this other person that he encounters later on, who's going through an eerily similar situation to what he's going through, I also liked him as well. He doesn't really show up too much until like the second half of the movie, but it was interesting to find out what's going on with him, and just his conversations with the main character. It just, it just kept building more and more to the story, and I was legitimately watching, like, okay, what's gonna happen? And so, just overall, the acting and the characters, they're as good as they really need to be here. Just the main characters that matter here are the main character and this guy that he finds later on, and also his best friend named Chris, to some extent or another. And yeah, so it's handled mostly pretty well there. As for the scares, yeah, the movie scared me. I can't deny it. Slenderman in this movie, pretty creepy villain. For a split second when he first showed up, I was like, oh my gosh, is this gonna just be bad? Because yes, you gotta cut him some slack. Even if the suit looks kind of cheesy, it's a no-budget horror film, so you gotta cut him some slack. But even so, if it's not scary because it looks so cheesy, then it's not scary, and that's how I felt for the short film The Reaper. Just The Reaper didn't scare me at all. It looked comical, and that's for a second, that's how it looked in this. But then, when he kept on showing up, yeah, it scared me. There's just seriously a legitimate aura of just dread that you really feel, that just becomes present on the scene whenever he shows up. Just like whenever he showed up, I got just a very distinct urge, like I want to back up, I want to get away, because it actually scared me. Yes, the suit looks kind of corny, but he creeped me out whenever he showed up. He really did. You just feel like, okay, this is an unearthly being. You don't want to be around this guy, this thing. And so Slenderman was very effective, especially considering it's YouTube. So yeah, totally forgive the fact that the suit looks a little cheesy. Overall, it's a creepy movie. It's paced fairly well, which is sometimes a problem with found footage movies. This movie didn't bore me. Again, the story is interesting. As for flaws, the climax of the movie, there were some things that were very good, very clever, and scary, because I was very on edge throughout the entire movie. But there were other things in the climax that made me laugh. It was kind of funny at times. The acting was just kind of bad in a few places. At the end, I was like, I'm wanting to get into this, but this is just taking me out of it because it's goofy. But at the same time, it was counterbalanced by other things. I was like, oh gosh, that's scary, at the end of the movie, and clever. And overall, this has the best story of any found footage horror film I've seen on Interviral so far. I won't say that the movie scared me as much as The Rake, because that movie legitimately scared me, like straight up. I was scared by that movie to a decent degree, more than most found footage movies, period, even professionally made ones. So that movie scared me a little bit more than this, but the story is much more interesting, and overall, this is probably the best Interviral film I've seen so far. For what it is, I'm going to give this an A-. Yes, it has faults, but, of course, to some extent, you gotta cut him some slack, as I've said in all the other Interviral reviews, but I'm just saying. And, I'm not cutting them too much slack. Like, I think they did a good job here, really. Very good for what it is. It's a creepy movie. Check out Slenderman if you haven't seen already, and if you're interested in Interviral films or just creepy YouTube videos.